Hey everyone, Brian Zane here with my NXT review for November 23rd, 2021. And yes, it is the end of an era as I have finally shaved off the last vestiges of my beard this week. It was the full beard, then it was the Jeff Hardy, and now I'm back to being, smooth-faced Brian Zane again. There are advantages and disadvantages, things that I like and that I don't like about, losing the beard and going back to this look. It was fun, and, the chance of me growing the beard back again next year is always open, so stay tuned for that, I guess. But yeah, get ready for a lot of weird, jumping back and forth in facial hairstyles in my videos for the next few weeks, because we filmed some stuff when I had a full beard, filmed some stuff when I had the Jeff Hardy, and it's all over the place. So have fun watching that and trying to keep track of the filming schedule I had. But right now, like what you like, don't be a dick. Let's begin NXT review. Grayson Waller cuts off the signature open to start the show, and he says all these legends in the opening are all just relics of the past. It's all about the new and the now, basically. He compares himself to guys like John Cena and The Rock and Roman Reigns, people who, fans talked trash to for many years, and now, of course, they're killing it in their respective fields and everything. He's interrupted by his opponent, Tommaso Ciampa, and they have the match. It's classic story of young versus old, newcomer versus grizzled veteran, tale as old as time. At one point in the match, Waller busts out the people's elbow in this thing, and I'm like, look, between Survivor Series and how the egg mystery paid off on Monday, I think the less Rock references we try and make right now, the better. It's still kind of a fresh wound. At one point in the match, Waller also hits a move. I think it's called the Green Bay Plunge. It's the one where the Sheamus does now, where the fireman's carry into the rolling flip, and Kenny Omega does it as well. But yeah, he did it where Ciampa was facing up and out, and so he landed on his stomach when Waller rolled through. It looked more dangerous for Waller when it was that way. It looked like his neck or his head was more exposed coming down that way. I don't know about that version of the move. Anyway, he also hits a big dive as well, but Ciampa hits the Willow's Bell and the fairy tale ending to win the match. I thought it was a good opener, and I think that Waller looked very good compared to the far more experienced Ciampa. I think Tommaso did a very good job kind of carrying him along and making that match look very competitive. We see LA Knight backstage having just watched the match. He makes fun of Grayson for losing. Joe Gacy comes in and says that his facts of life still hurt, man. And LA, in so many words, says he wants to beat Joe up. So Joe says his safe space is in the ring, and it's always open, so that match will be coming up shortly. The Toxic Attraction, we see a shot of them showing up at the building earlier, and they're just kind of talking trash about Cora and Jade for later on. Dakota Kai just shows up and starts twitching next to them as they're walking through the back area, and they see this area, all this mess, things have been broken and just thrown around and smashed and everything. They're, this place is gross. And they walk by, and it's Kaylee Ray with an aluminum bat. And based on that, it just feels like, she's going to be the fourth woman on War Games now. It's just the flimsiest of excuses, but we'll see how it plays out. Cameron Grimes makes his way to the ring, sporting a haircut and a trimmed beard after what Duke Hudson did to him last week in the Poker Showdown. Another fiery, passionate babyface promo from Cameron here, and he's just been banging these out all year with great regularity, it seems, talking about all he's overcome in life and how throughout everything he's been through, Cameron's always held it down, and how he always kept the long hair and the beard as kind of a reminder of his humble beginnings and where he came from. But now Duke Hudson has taken that away from him, so things gotten very personal now. Cameron calls out Duke for a fight, but Duke, we see him on the big screen getting a fresh snip, and so he says that Cameron should be thanking him for the free haircut after he took some of Duke's money in that Poker Showdown. So basically they want one more match, and Cameron challenges him to a hair versus hair match, and Duke goes, well, I could do with the trim off the top, and he accepts. So right away there's two strikes against that right there, where it's like, one, why are you going with hair versus hair when one of the guys barely has hair? He doesn't have long hair. The hair matches always feel more effective or more worth it when both guys have a lot of hair to lose. But also when Duke literally just says flat out he's not worried about that match, because either way I get a haircut, where it's okay, so what are the stakes? What is he putting on the line? What pride is being offered there if he admits that, okay, I'm game for this, win or lose? And so that I thought was weird. I don't mind a blow-off match with some kind of stipulation, but maybe hair versus money or something. I don't know. Maybe don't have them both put their hair up when Duke Hudson can, whatever he gets shaved off, can grow back in a month. We hear from Pete Dunne, who says he's waited too long for another title opportunity in NXT, and he's going to walk away the North American champion champion. We hear from Indy Hartwell with a medical update on Dexter Lumis, where he says his hand has been broken, so he can't even draw anymore. He'll be out for about a month, she says, and dedicates his next match to him. Before the next tag match, though, we see a vignette for Tiffany Stratton, whose whole gimmick is she's a spoiled, rich daddy's girl, and everything she gets is because her dad, pays the money and everything. And so it's very clear cut what this character is. I saw snippets of her performing on 205 Live last week, so I'm getting a bit of a glimpse of what she's like in the ring. My whole thing is place your bets on how long it'll take before she's released due to budget cuts, because it feels like that's what happens. You get mildly invested in the character and they take him away. In our next match, Indy Hartwell and Persia Pirotta take on Kacy Catanzaro and Caden Carter. Indy's got permanent mope face during this matchup because she's sad about Dexter having been hurt, but why is it taking you a week and you're still feeling mopey and you can't even focus on the match itself? It's pretty short and sweet. Catanzaro gets a blind tag and jumps off of Caden's shoulders, or is launched off them, I should say, onto Indy for the win. I thought it was kind of wild that last week they showed Persia just being absolutely dominant and not at all hindered by the fact that Indy was not present for that matchup and squashed the two jobbers. And here she didn't get to show really hardly any of that strength here. So they're seeming to be maybe moving the direction of, maybe Indy's a weak link or something. But who knows with Persia? It just seems like night and day kind of how she was portrayed, her specifically. We see Andre Chase giving his students a tour of the facility, and he sees Cameron Grimes being kind of upset, and he says, "See, students, this is why you shouldn't make decisions based on anger. That's why Cameron's in the place that he's in right now." Cameron tells him to go to hell, and then we see the in-ring return of Santos Escobar as he takes on the perennial enhancement talent Malik Blade. It's a squash match. Santos wins with the Phantom Driver. Then after the match, Elektra Lopez on the mic saying that the group is now stronger than ever before now that Santos is back at full strength. But then Von Wagner and Kyle O'Reilly interrupt, and they say they want a shot at the tag team titles, but LDF bring up the fact they've already beaten them in a tag match. But Von Wagner points out that his foot was on the rope when they lost. And then you've got Imperium, the tag champions, showing up in the crow's nest, and they say neither team can stop them. They tell the two teams to figure it out and fight amongst themselves, and the winner of that match will face Imperium for the tag titles at War Games. Gotta admit though, I'm not thrilled about either team going on to face Imperium or any of that combination. None of that appeals to me. Imperium, I'm not totally won over by them. LDF, they've been on the bubble for a while. It seems pretty obvious that Kyle and Vaughn are going to win just by virtue of them being the baby faces. So I don't know, and I'm not totally sold on Von Wagner either. So it's just, this one is just kind of a lateral move for me. I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. There's some tension backstage in the women's locker room, and Cora Jade thankfully breaks the tension by saying, "Are we seriously doing the can we coexist thing here? That's old, it's outdated, it's stupid. Thank you. I'm glad finally someone said that on actual programming. Now let's put our money where our mouth is and actually start changing the actual booking so it reflects that kind of opinion." So anyway, they're on the search for a fourth lady for the Survivor Series, or for the War Games team, I should say. So that's the story we hear in this segment. And then we see Tony D'Angelo being interviewed backstage, and bada bing, he's got money and people are betting on all three people in the triple threat match to win. There's a lot of high odds for Pete Dunne, but he doesn't feel too strongly about that. He's trying to get Mackenzie Mitchell to put some action on the match as well. Then we get Mandy Rose versus Cora Jade in a non-title matchup. Mandy's showing some disrespect early on, but Cora's got some spark. And then when Mandy starts to take over and has the match won, suddenly we see Kaylee Ray showing up, and she's got her bat. So it kind of reminds me of Riot from the original WoW show. She swung the bat around, was bashing everything. So anyway, Mandy is distracted. Cora rolls her up to get the big upset win. And my question is, why did it have to be Mandy Rose? Why couldn't it have been Gigi Dolan or JC Jane? Yeah, they're tag team champions, fine, but Mandy Rose is the champion. Don't you want her to look strong going into the War Games match? I don't know. It just sounds crazy. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. But we do get a backstage bit with all the ladies afterward where Kaylee Ray just says, "Okay, I'm going to be your fourth teammate on this War Games thing, and I'm going to be in the, the Advantage ladder match next week." So wow, what amazing build to this War Games match we have had for sure. And guess what? It doesn't get a whole lot better as the show goes on. Joe Gacy and LA Knight never takes place because Grayson Waller actually jumps LA during his entrance from behind, and so they brawl their way to the the back. Joe takes this time to try to do more of a sermon in the ring, but the Diamond Mine interrupt him to do a little bit of payback here, saying, hey, you stole our spotlight last week, now we're taking some of yours. They want Joe to leave, but Joe says he's got a bone to pick with Roderick Strong as the Cruiserweight Champion, saying the championship is divisive in nature and it promotes weight shaming, which I think is a hilarious take on that belt. From that kind of character, it makes a lot of sense. So then Roderick says his next money match is standing right in front of him. So Malcolm, make the match. And so, Malcolm says the match is going to be on. And at TakeOver, Roderick will beat you for the title like a Little John track. Yeah. And so then he wants to go sick the Creed brothers on him. But then Harlan shows up and spooks the Diamond Mine away for a little bit. Well, there's a storyline that I didn't know I would be into until it happened here. It feels like heel versus heel, but the difference in personalities is so wild, it doesn't really matter. And I think the fans are going to kind of make their own decision on who they want to cheer and boo at TakeOver. I think it's funny they're waiving the weight limit thing here. The possibility of Joe Gacy becoming the Cruiserweight Champion, I think is pretty entertaining. It's very peculiar. And I think that him as the Cruiserweight Champion to be like, we can, as a way of like unifying and ending the divisiveness of weight limits, I think that's got some potential for sure. MSK continue their shaman search. It turns out they're high as balls behind the wheel because the cops pull them over for going 7 miles an hour. It's very much like the black sheep joke where Chris Farley and David Spade are doing the same thing. But anyway, they get out and the cop's about to catch them with their stash, but then a speeding car goes by and that catches the cops' attention. So the story and the search continues for MSK. Well, the shaman mystery not getting any easier to solve. I know last week when I brought it up, a lot of people theorized that maybe John Morrison could be the shaman. Well, not anymore, he's not. Back in the ring, Ivy Nile takes on Yulisa Leon in a match. It's a squash match. Ivy rolls through an O'Connor roll attempt and gets like a reverse neck crank on her opponent to win in very short fashion. And then we see a Solo Sikoa promo where he says he used to run with the Day One boys, but alluding to the Usos, but now he runs alone, calls himself the Street Champion of the Islands. And then we see backstage the grizzled young veterans steal one of the Japanese announcers' wallet, and then the brawl between LA Knight and Grayson Waller continues, spilling through the arena, and that's kind of an ongoing thing as the rest of the show goes. And then we get a vignette or a promo with Boa, who looks to be in a lot of like pain and kind of internal suffering because he says Mei Ying has passed her powers onto him, and like physically he's having a hard time dealing with it, but he says that when he can control it, everyone will fear him. Kind of a surprising and interesting twist with this one, because when I read last week that the Mei Ying gimmick had been reportedly shelved, I assumed that was the end of the supernatural thing they were doing with this, but nope, they're carrying on with Boa, to my surprise. So we'll see how Boa carries on with this character. It's so interesting how Tian Sha has been fragmented so much just in the last month and a half, how Xia Li's being called up to SmackDown, Boa's sticking around, and Mei Ying is going to be MIA, doing whatever, but not doing the mystical gimmick anymore. That's Boa's bag now. And so yeah, well again, I feel like I've been saying this since the whole storyline began, and Xia Li and Boa did the big training stuff, like they've kind of got me interested again, so we'll see. GYV take on Briggs and Jensen in tag team action here, and of course Gibson and Drake using their newly acquired sneaking powers to good use early on here. We get a cutaway in the middle of the match to the brawl between Knight and Waller continuing. Go back to the match. Briggs and Jensen do get a good run here. Drake tries to pretend that his knee's blown out and so as a distraction, but it does not work for them. Briggs and Jensen get the win. So it's proving that the new strategy being employed by GYV here, maybe not the most effective, but again, it seems like a real big betrayal of character almost, how dumb they've become in the last month. They seem like a very competent and well accomplished tag team before this big reset where now they're just kind of like, yeah, we're gonna pickpocket people and steal people's money on Uber. Main event time, triple threat match, the North American Championship as Carmelo Hayes defends against Johnny Gargano and Pete Dunne. Not a lot specifically for me to say about this matchup, but I will say it was very well done. I think, again, kind of a very similar dynamic to, Grayson Waller and Ciampa from earlier in the show. You've got the much less experienced Carmelo Hayes kind of working really well around the big veterans of Dunne and Gargano. Everyone gets time to shine, look pretty good here. In the end, Tony D'Angelo grabbing Pete Dunne mid-pinfall and throwing him into the stairs because apparently he's trying to, manipulate the outcome of the match for his benefit with the gambling and everything. Hayes hitting his top rope like axe kick to Gargano to win and retain in a very good main event. Then after the match, LA Knight and Grayson Waller continue their brawls back at the ringside area, and then all hell's broken loose. We got teams fighting teams here. Hayes wants to Pillmanize Johnny Gargano's hand, but then Tommaso Ciampa makes the save. We get a bit of a standoff here, a War Games chant. We can see DIY kind of sharing a moment in the ring there. Gargano and Ciampa, the band getting back together. Then Braun Breaker shows up, and then he just screams War Games. They all has fight to end the show. So based on what we saw here at the end of the show, it seems the teams will be Ciampa, Gargano, Dunne, and Knight, which confuses me because I thought he was a heel as well, versus Hayes, Waller, D'Angelo, and Breaker. Okay, but why? It just feels like the flimsiest excuses to get these War Games matches put together, which are supposed to be feud enders, but for a lot of these feuds, they feel they're just beginning. So what are you doing putting them in War Games? It just feels very silly. It didn't take long since the fall of the Undisputed Era for the whole War Games concept at NXT to be kind of meaningless. Then again, it is a rebuilding year. It's NXT 2.0. Things are just getting started there. So maybe next year's won't be so bad if they have a next year's. But yeah, I'm not that excited about these War Games matches when it feels there's no, the heat behind it and what's gotten us to this point doesn't feel right. I'm going to give this week's NXT a C grade, right down the middle. I really enjoyed the opening match and the main event. I think both were the best matches of the night, but also they each told a story or had a theme of the younger talent being able to hang with the more experienced veterans and looking pretty good in the process, I think. Also, I think the Joe Gacy, Roderick Strong build is some of the most interesting right now in NXT in terms of what's being built to TakeOver. Grimes and Hudson being kind of a close second, but again, the fact that it's going to be both guys risking their hair doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Mandy versus Cora, as far as that goes, again, I mean, it's just you're not too used to seeing the champions on NXT losing matches like that and not looking strong. That seems like a very much main roster kind of bag, but right now it's, I don't want to see Mandy losing just yet. And again, the War Games build, it's just they forgot they had it, and it's oh god, we have no teams. We have 2 weeks to throw something together, and that's what we got the last 2 weeks. And so it just doesn't have the same feeling as what the last few War Games shows have had. But that aside, the rest of the card they're building, the non-War Games matches, do have a lot of potential that I'm interested in. But what did you think of the show this week, folks? Let me know in the comments section below. Sorry, there will not be a Dynamite review tomorrow night, nor will there be a new episode of our podcast, This Week in Regret. Due to the Thanksgiving break, my family is in town. I'll be spending time with them. But do not fear, there will be a new episode of Better Champion dropping Wednesday morning. And hey, if you want to see some of that beard inconsistency I was telling you about at the top of this video, you'll see a lot of that in that one for sure. So stay tuned for that. And of course, the SmackDown review will be back as normal on Friday night. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.